And teen soccer players and their coach remain trapped in an underground cave. Hello, I'm Mike Emanuel. Welcome to America's news headquarters on this Independence Day.
Absolutely. I'm Ebony K. Williams. Rescue crews are working now on plans to try to get them out through floodwaters that block the exit from the cave. Stephen Boitano is live in Mae Sai, Thailand, near the cave. Stephen, what exactly are they doing to try to rescue the children?
Well, the SEAL team is training them to swim and dive. They're teaching them to breathe with full-face diving masks, as none of them have experience in diving at all whatsoever. They're with them around the clock, providing food, medical attention to make them stronger, since they didn't eat for about 9 days. They're also diverting the waters, building dams, pumping nonstop to drop the water levels. And they're searching for shafts above to find alternate exits. It's still very risky, though. With the difficult terrain, strong currents, and dark waters, getting them out is going to be a very risky. And they want safety. That's the number one thing. They want to get them out alive and safe.
Absolutely. So, yeah, go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah. Oh, and if the water levels fell and the flow weakened, they would take them out very quickly. But there's a risk of water levels rising now, because monsoon rains are expected over the weekend. And if that happens, and they're not coming out by Friday, they could be inside for a lot longer, maybe many months.
Speaking of that and the concerns of safety, as you say, what kind of timeline, I guess in best case scenario, could we be looking at here?
Well, best case scenario, they could come out tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, they could announce in the morning news conference that they're starting to bring them out. That is best case scenario. So we're all hoping for that.
And I had to say it, but worst case scenario, how long could this take?
Worst case scenario, they say 4 months. They could be living in the caves for 4 months till the waters eventually go down on their own after the monsoon season.
Absolutely. That is really tragic, and we're just going to push our prayers up and wish them a speedy and safe recovery. Stephen Boitano, live from Thailand. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Shifting gears to the showdown on the Supreme Court, with President Trump just days away from naming his nominee to replace retiring Justice Anthony Kennedy. Conservatives now expressing some concerns about one of the frontrunners, Judge Brett Kavanaugh, as they scrutinize his past rulings and his ties to establishment Republicans. Meanwhile, the president, talking up his upcoming pick, had a rally last night in Greenbrier, West Virginia.
I think you're going to really love it, like Justice Gorsuch. We hit a home run there, and we're going to hit a home run here. And step by step, we are making America great again.
Al Weaver is a reporter with the Washington Examiner. Al, good to see you. What do you make of the campaign for and against Judge Brett Kavanaugh?
No, it's very interesting. It's very interesting right now what's going on with Kavanaugh. And this is something we've seen play out, in previous legislative fights over the past year, especially when you look at the immigration situation, and you also look at what we saw in guns. The president, he's dabbled with, going out and not possibly nominating someone like this, or going out and fighting for some certain issue. But then again, he always comes back to his conservative base and sees what they think about a certain thing. And right now, some conservatives are coming out against Kavanaugh, and the knives are really coming out for him right now, especially in a few things. You talk about the healthcare, a couple of healthcare rulings. Talk about one about an immigrant who wanted an abortion. Some of those things really have conservatives, uneasy at this point about Kavanaugh. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. It's July 9th. It's coming down. So,
Al, are Judge Kavanaugh's former colleagues in the Bush administration playing it smart by not selling him too hard? Probably at this point. One thing that will not help him right now are his Bush ties. That is something that obviously the president has a very icy relationship with the Bush family. We saw the other week it crop up again when Donald Trump Jr. He declined to campaign for George P. Bush down in Texas for land commissioner for his reelection. It's one of those things that, the less he talks about the less the Bush connections come up at this point for Brett Kavanaugh, the better for him and his chances of getting on the court. Court and replacing Anthony Kennedy, who he clerked for back in the day.
With a 51-49 majority in the Senate, the White House needs to keep Republican senators on board. President Trump has spoken to Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, and reportedly the senator has concerns about Kavanaugh on health care. Is that big trouble?
It could cut both ways, honestly. With folks like Rand Paul and a couple others, that obviously could be an issue. But when you look at some other issues, some other people in the caucus, you look at Susan Collins, you look at Lisa Murkowski, both pro-life Republicans whose votes that Republicans, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump will need to pass whoever the candidate is, be it Kavanaugh, be it someone else. They'll need those two on board to get them to 50 with John McCain out. It's a little bit of a heavy lift for Republicans, but they voted for all the nominees in the past. This could be no different, but we'll have to wait and see. Kavanaugh's pass could come back as being a positive as far as those two are concerned.
There's also some talk about a conservative senator being a possibility, a guy you and I see on the Hill all the time. Yep. Would a Mike Lee nomination keep Republican senators unified?
Probably. Mike Lee is someone who's very highly thought of in the caucus. While he is very conservative, he is very mild-mannered and well-liked within the caucus. Mike Lee is very conservative, obviously. Ted Cruz has really been pushing him for this spot. He got his name included on the list for Supreme Court when the president expanded the list back before the election in 2016, along with Justice Gorsuch, who ended up being nominated, of course. I'm not sure if it's a possibility. I think it hurt Lee the other day to openly talk about it a little bit. We've seen that in the past where, the person comes out and says, yes, I want this job, and then they usually haven't gotten that job. Right. So it's a wait and see approach, but I'd be cautiously pessimistic about Lee getting nominated to the court.
All right, Al, so on this Independence Day, take us behind the curtain. How do you help a particular judge without going too far and turning off President Trump and his White House team?
No, I think right now the one thing that's really good for Kavanaugh is he has the 12 years on the D.C. circuit. That's a big thing for him right now, especially in comparison to some others. You have Amy Coney Barrett, who's the other top candidate for this spot. She just got on the court last year. She's viewed as a little bit green, someone who doesn't have all the legal writings, and someone who could end up being is a little bit more of a wild card. Could end up being a Sandra Day O'Connor in a sense. So I think that's the one thing Kavanaugh really has going for him is his writing background. But the other thing that could hurt him ultimately, when you look at his paper trail, is his work for the Bush administration as staff secretary. Had to deal with millions of documents, and also on the Ken Starr investigation, where there's a massive paper trail in there that will not help him with Democrats.
My guess is the White House is gearing up for a massive fight over whomever their nominee is at this point. There's no reason to believe that a senator would get easier treatment from fellow senators, right? So either way, it's going to be a fight.
Either way, this is going to be a massive fight. President Trump's had a few big victories in the past year and a half. Obviously, Gorsuch is one of them. This could eclipse that.
Al Weaver from the Washington Examiner. Fascinating stuff. I'll see you back on the Hill, brother.
See you soon, Mike.
Ebony?
This is a Fox News alert. Controversy surrounding Republican Congressman Jim Jordan concerning allegations of sexual abuse committed by a team doctor at Ohio State University when the lawmaker was a wrestling coach there decades ago. Now, Jordan just addressed these concerns at a 4th of July event in Ohio. Our own Peter Ducey is live in Washington. Peter, tell us exactly what is Jordan being accused of doing here?
Ebony, Jordan is accused of knowing about but not reporting a series of sexual assaults by a now deceased wrestling team doctor named Richard Strauss more than 2 decades ago. One of the men who says that Jordan did nothing at the time is named Mike DeSabato.
It was something that we would discuss on a regular basis, mainly with nervous banter, locker room banter. If you've ever been in a male locker room, there's a lot of testosterone, and there was a lot of banter about, Doc being a groper.
Another wrestler disputes that, though. Lee Kemp says this, quote, "The idea that Jim would know of abuse of his wrestlers and do nothing is utterly absurd. I first saw Jim Jordan's tenacity in wrestling. America has seen how tenacious Jim Jordan is in Congress, and that same tenacity is exactly what Jim would have brought to abuse of wrestlers in his charge if he had known about it." That statement and another defending Jordan were distributed by the congressman's office this morning. Ebony.
Peter, let me ask you, it seems here that the center issue is around knowledge. So from what we know so far, how is Jordan planning to defend himself around that issue?
His office says there's nothing to it, Ebony. They sent us this statement. Congressman Jordan never saw any abuse, never heard about any abuse, and never had any abuse reported to him during his time as a coach at Ohio State. He has not been contacted by investigators about the matter, but will assist them in any way they ask, because if what is alleged is true, the victims deserve full justice, a full investigation and justice. Jordan himself later told Politico, "It's not true. I never knew about any type of abuse. If I did, I would have done something about it. And look, if there are people who are abused, then that's terrible, and we want justice to happen." Speaker Ryan's office has also now weighed in. They say these are serious allegations, and Jordan himself is often mentioned as a possible candidate for Speaker once Ryan leaves. Ebony.
All right, Peter, obviously we'll keep following this and bring updates as soon as we have them. Peter Doocy from Washington, D.C. Thank you. Mike?
Ebony, wildfire season with an early start this 4th of July as firefighters in several western states are trying to put out dozens of fast-moving flames. The bone-tried conditions making their job much harder. Our Marianne Rafferty is following the story from Los Angeles. Marianne?
Hi, Mike. Fire crews across the western U.S. are fighting more than flames. They're battling something they have no control over, and that's the weather. Intensely hot temperatures across the West only making matters worse for those crews as they try and save homes and businesses. In Denver, a raging fire has already destroyed more than 100 homes in the Colorado mountains and forced hundreds more evacuations as many families were planning to celebrate the 4th. The spring fire in Colorado, the largest one, covering 123 square miles, which is about 5 times the size of Manhattan, if you want to put it in perspective. And Utah, a similar situation with a raging wildfire near a popular fishing resort. Residents there were forced to evacuate, and they're still in shock at the possibility of losing their homes, as are some folks in Northern California. Very nervous homeowners keeping a close eye on the flames.
It's been very scary. One minute it seems like it's going away, and the next minute it's flaring up again. So we're on watch.
And those wildfires sending a thick layer of smoke and ash south of the San Francisco area. More than 900 buildings are threatened. The massive blaze there causing some officials to cancel fireworks shows, urging folks in the area to just stay indoors due to unhealthy air quality. So far, at least 2,500 residents have been told to evacuate. And officials also worried about things like campfires or fireworks, only adding to the problem and possibly starting new fires just as they're working around the clock to knock down the out-of-control fires already burning. The only hope is a break in the hot, dry conditions, but that's not looking good right now. Temps are expected to remain hot across the western U.S. today. Mike?
Marianne Rafferty live from our West Coast newsroom. Marianne, many thanks.
Thank you.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is about to travel to North Korea. We'll ask a former intelligence officer what we can expect. Plus, another mystery in England with 2 more people in critical condition following exposure to a mystery substance. Now they're looking for links to the Russian spy poisoning, with nearby communities on edge.
I've got a 10-year-old son. We live literally 2 seconds away. He plays out here with his friends, so it is a bit of a concern, especially as you're hearing the cordons are sort of in Salisbury, other places in Amesbury as well.
Rain season than we had last year. Meteorologists from Colorado State University predict 10 storms will form, but only 4 are expected to become hurricanes. Now, the newest projections are down from earlier reports that saw 7 hurricanes coming this year. Experts attribute the smaller number of storms to an El Nino that in the Pacific will help break up storms in the Atlantic.
Fox News alert, British counterterrorism officials are now investigating a suspected poisoning after a man and woman in their 40s were believed to have been exposed to an unknown substance. Officials say the pair, who were found unconscious over the weekend in Amesbury, remain in critical condition. They are being treated at the same hospital where the former Russian spy and double agent Sergei Skripal was treated after being poisoned by a Soviet-era nerve agent. His daughter was also a victim of the attack. It is unclear whether there is any connection between the Skripal attack and the current incident.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is set to travel to North Korea tomorrow. This is part of the White House efforts to continue moving along the nuclear agreement with Pyongyang. Now, I'm joined now by Don Bramer, former Combined Joint Special Operations Task Force Intelligence Officer and the founder and chairman of Bramer Group. Thanks for joining, Don.
Thanks, Ebony.
Okay, so you really outlined what I think are two really important distinctions around the fact that, yes, the two countries' leaders are talking, but there might be some misalignments. Particularly, you talk about, Don, the definition of denuclearization, what that actually means from both of these administrations and regimes, and then also if they agree on what denuclearization is, what will it really look like? Can you kind of walk us through where you think the misalignments exist?
Well, if you go back, and I think this process can be really compared to what we saw in the early 1980s. You know, it took a series of meetings between the Soviet Union and the United States before we ever got to the INF talks. This is very similar to that process. The definition of denuclearization from our side means no more production of nuclear weapons, but also getting rid of the ones that the North Koreans have in inventory. And I think that's where there's the misinterpretation. What we see is, I think we very well could see stopping of production, but Kim's going to hold on to the weapons that he has in order, because he still sees the United States as a very viable threat.
You also describe it, Don, as a very high-stakes poker game, the likes of which, of course, we've seen before with President Reagan or in Gorbachev. If indeed this is another instance of that type of high-stakes poker, who stands more to lose here?
Well, I think the world stands to lose if we can't come to an agreement here. You know, and I'll go back to, this is a process, and we tend to think that in today's world that things happen immediately and overnight, and probably because of social media and things like that. But this is a process that will take years to accomplish. You know, just this past Sunday, there was the first set of negotiations between U.S. and North Korean officials there on the border of North Korea. And as we know, Secretary Pompeo is on his way back. This is a series of talks, a series of steps to define those first steps. It's even been rumored that the president has invited Kim back to the United States in September to continue that dialogue.
And of course, I think most agree the dialogue feels positive and feels constructive. There have been, though, reports already, while even the summit was still taking place, that perhaps the Kim regime was still improving on nuclear facilities and things of that nature. Don, how do you reconcile that? How do you see it from your point of view?
Well, no one knows what was said in those private talks between the president and Kim, and those who were there for the later discussion was a very small group. So I think we need to rely on, you know, what were the actual discussions? What did they agree on? We're still in the very, very early stages of these talks, and a long way to go. What we do know is there has been no more testing. And that was part of the agreement. So he's held up to that end of the bargain, and that we held up to our side, and we have not gone forward with our exercises. The rest is yet remains to be seen, and I think it's going to be a long process before we get there.
Certainly. Shifting gears quickly, but still speaking about kind of nuclear weapons here, the president is also set to speak with President Putin of Russia. And as you say here, Don, it's very important, that conversation, as it relates to the nuclear arms control of the globe. Kind of walk me through what you expect that conversation to be like between President Trump and President Putin.
Well, I think if the president holds true to his fashion, we're going to see a summit that looked very much like what we saw in Singapore. I expect a small private gathering beforehand with just the two gentlemen, and then a larger gathering afterwards to discuss larger policies. But I think the crucial thing is what will be said in that initial few minutes of that meeting between the two, and they're going to lay the groundwork for their rapport moving forward.
Now, when President Trump met with Kim Jong-un, he led with peace through strength. Do you expect the president to use that same kind of narrative, if you will, with President Putin?
Who knows what the narrative is going to be, but I think, you know, we could very well hear with this president, maybe we'll go back to what we heard in the 1980s of trust but verify. That would seem to be very fitting as we sit here 30 years later.
I couldn't agree more with you there. Last question here, Don, and that is, speaking of narratives, you say depending on what happens between President Trump and President Putin's conversation, it could change the political narrative around what that relationship looks like. Many across the country have at least questions, some even concerns about that. Where do you think that narrative could maybe alter or advance?
You know, as I've said earlier, I think as we move forward to the Russian U.S. summit, it's going to be a feeding frenzy. There's going to be theories and accusations coming out from both sides. I think it's going to be stand back and watch, but you know, the one Russian collusion that I am sure of is what we saw last month was by our Washington Capitals, and there was certainly some collusion there with Mr. Ovechkin.
Don, thank you for your service to our country, and enjoy your 4th of July. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike?
Ebony, across the country, law enforcement is ramping up security ahead of 4th of July celebrations tonight. Still ahead, we'll take a closer look at how our nation's capital is keeping people safe. Plus, a battle brewing on Capitol Hill over President Trump's nominee for the Supreme Court, as Democrats warn what this could mean for women's reproductive rights.
We're going to give you a great one. We're going to announce it on Monday. And I think you'll be very impressed. He's a very talented.
Continues to grow as lawmakers gear up for a battle on Capitol Hill over who President Trump will pick to replace retiring Justice Anthony Kennedy. During his presidential campaign, he promised, if elected, he would appoint judges who would put an end to the landmark Roe v. Wade abortion rights case, leaving many concerned about what this open seat could mean for women's reproductive rights. Eric Beach is a Republican strategist and the co-chairman of Trump Great America Alliance. And Robin Biro is a Democratic strategist and former Obama campaign staffer. Gentlemen, good to see you. Happy Independence Day.
You too. Likewise.
Eric, Maine Senator Susan Collins is being targeted by abortion rights group NARAL. Actually, let's take a listen to this. Oh, there you go. So there it is. Basically challenging Senator Collins, saying Trump has been loud and clear, end Roe versus Wade. What about you, Senator Collins? So what is the impact on the next confirmation of the next Supreme Court nominee?
Well, my mentor, the great Larry Thomas, used to say, when you're winning on messaging, just stop. And we're winning on messaging. We should not fall down this rabbit hole that this is going to be a debate about Roe versus Wade only. We're looking for a justice that's going to enforce the Constitution. That's what the judges are supposed to do. Supreme Court judge, all judges are supposed to do. And so I think the Democrats are making a huge mistake because they have senators in red states that are running for re-election, and they're putting them in a box. And we welcome this debate. You're looking at folks like, Donnelly in Indiana, and you're looking at people like Joe Tester, who didn't vote for Judge Gorsuch. What's he going to do this time around? So I think this is the debate that Republicans should welcome, because I think we're winning on this issue.
Robin, our graphics department has been working overtime. We actually have some senators to watch that we can show you at this point. Collins, Murkowski, Manchin from West Virginia, a red state Democrat, Donnelly, a red state Democrat, and Heitkamp, of course, from North Dakota. Is it realistic to think that you can convince a Republican to vote against the next SCOTUS nominee?
Considering Representative Collins is from Maine and she represents those constituents, that's a tough issue for them, and her responsibility, of course, is to represent their interests. So that's first and foremost. I don't think it's a losing strategy to target her specifically, and she's already indicated that she wants to make sure that we go by established law. So I can respect that. And the GOP famously wants the government out of people's lives. So I do think that it's a strategy that we are looking to proceed with.
Eric, do you expect Republicans to all get on board once there's an announcement and to really unify to help President Trump get his next Supreme Court nominee confirmed?
Absolutely, because the reality is, 43 states already have some sort of provisions against abortion. 2 states have some, Texas and Alabama, against late-term abortions. I think you're going to see the senators all get on board, utilize. I think we're going to have more than 50 votes because, once again, these Democrats are going to need to be able to vote for this, whoever the nominee might be, in order to win re-election. Yes, it's political, but only for those Democrats in red states.
All right, that'll be something to watch. Now, Robin, Senator Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader, is facing a lot of heat from the left, calling on him to scrap decorum and civility in opposing the president. Does Schumer need to shift left?
It's not just that, to be honest, Mike. There's a fundamental problem right now with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi because they are established Dems. They are in the pockets of corporate America. There's actually a cry, and you'll be hearing more of this from Democrats, that they need to go. That they're masterful legislators. They're good Democrats, but as leaders, look at how many seats we've lost in the House. So to be honest, Mike, I think in the days ahead we will be hearing more that they actually need to go.
We should be seeing plenty of that fight after Election Day. Now, as we've seen with some House Democratic candidates being cautious about supporting Nancy Pelosi going forward, there's Kyrsten Sinema, an Arizona candidate for Senate, a Democrat, and the latest polling suggests she could easily win that seat, who says she will not support Chuck Schumer to be the Democratic leader. What about that, Eric?
Well, look, there's a lot of buyer's remorse inside of Arizona. Full disclosure, I'm involved in one of the races down there with Dr. Kelly Ward. And what happens down there is, this is a center-right state. And too bad Kyrsten Sinema has a record. She has failed us with supporting Obamacare. There was a 121% increase inside of Arizona. And so I think they have a real problem shifting to the middle when you have a record that counters what the will of Arizona voters are. And that is, again, healthcare premiums have skyrocketed, as well as she will never talk about building a wall. Arizona is a border state. That's the number 1, 2, and 3 issue inside of that state. I think she's going to have real trouble in the general election.
My sense from talking to folks on the Hill, both on the right and on the left, is they believe Chuck Schumer has solid political instincts. How does he play it going forward, Robin?
He's got a tough road ahead. But right now, I'm still political director for the party, and we are building inroads still with the party. We've got to regain the trust of our party. We lost a good bit of trust with the 2016 election, the way that all rolled out with Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. So Chuck Schumer has got to navigate that, and it's a tough road because he's still perceived as sort of the old guard, Mike.
Does seeing Joe Crowley here in New York City lose basically sound alarm bells, Robin?
Yes, it does. And everything with going on in New York City does sound alarm bells. I will say that, we are paying attention to the voice of the young. We didn't respect what they were saying in 2016, in my humble opinion. I was a Hillary supporter, and it's time that we pay attention to what they have to say, but help direct that message and direct that energy because we can use it.
All right, Eric Beach, Robin Biro, thank you very much for your time. Happy Independence Day.
Thank you.
You too.
Ebony?
You too.
As we celebrate our nation's birthday with the annual reading of the Declaration of Independence on the steps of the National Archives in Washington, D.C., crews are setting up for the big fireworks show that will take place after sunset under those big blue skies. Doug McElway is live at the National Mall, where preparations are now underway. Doug, what are you seeing so far?
Well, so far the crowd is fairly light. We're still waiting for the crowd to build here. Those who are here at this early juncture tend to be out-of-town tourists or out-of-country tourists who are pretty much unfamiliar with Washington's notorious heat and humidity. The locals will be streaming in later as we get closer to dusk, though. But the stage is set for all the fireworks tonight, thanks in part to the preparation of the National Park Service and other federal agencies. They've been doing this for more than half a century, and they know exactly what they're doing. Some numbers to indicate that for you now. They've installed 18,000 feet of chain link fence around the National Mall, 14,000 feet of bike racks, 350 portable toilets. 150 National Park Service employees and 100 other volunteers will be throughout the mall today picking up trash and recycling stuff as the day progresses. The number that most counts pertains to the actual fireworks. There are 6,500 shells in place right now between the reflecting pool and the World War II Memorial. The display gets underway at 9:09 p.m. tonight and lasts for exactly 18 minutes. As for the security, ever since 9/11, it has been heightened here tremendously. You can only gain access to the National Mall through 8 access points, and I can assure you that they will check your belongings quite carefully. Prohibited are guns, knives, and ammo. No surprise there. Also, no drones are allowed, no alcohol, no glass containers, no explosives, and no fireworks. And because people will be packed in quite tightly here as the evening progresses, they're asking people to limit their recreational activities like badminton, softball, things of that sort. No drag racing, no stock car racing, no tractor pulls. I added those last 3. As of 10 p.m. tonight, the cleanup crews will descend on the National Mall, and by this time tomorrow afternoon, you will scarcely have known that several 100,000 people had descended on the National Mall for the 4th of July festivities. Back to you in New York.
All right, Doug, quick question for you. Obviously, we are going out for a grand celebration this evening, but the big question, is President Trump going to be watching those fireworks tonight?
He will be watching from the White House. He's not here right now. He's out at the Trump National Golf Resort in Sterling, Virginia, taking in an enjoyable round of golf. Enjoyable if you consider 101-degree heat index to be enjoyable. But he returns to the White House at 4 o'clock this afternoon. They'll be picnicking with military families at 5 o'clock this evening, and then they'll all watch the fireworks from the South Lawn, again at 9:09 p.m. An occasion that those military families will never forget. An important contribution that the White House is making for them, considering the sacrifices they've made for this country.
Indeed, indeed. Doug McElway, thank you so much, live from Washington. Mike?
Reminder, kids, leave your drones at home. New tariffs set to take effect Friday. Ahead, what this will mean for your wallet, plus the tax bill 6 months later. We'll talk to a CPA about what you need to do now before tax filing season begins. The vicious murder of a New York City teenager. Police made the latest arrests in the case yesterday, bringing the total number of arrests to 10. 15-year-old Lissandro Guzman Feliz was slashed in the neck with a machete by suspected gang members last month. He had been a member of NYPD's Law Enforcement Explorers program for teens. Officials have said the attack may have been a case of mistaken identity.
Now, we're just 2 days away from the new tariffs taking effect on products traded between the U.S. and China. The added fees could drive up prices on many products while hurting American businesses. Now, as countries flirt with engaging in what could become a trade war, I'm now joined by Gene Marks, a certified public accountant and business columnist for Forbes magazine. Thanks for joining, Gene.
Hi, Ebony. How are you?
I'm doing great. Happy 4th to you. So when the tariffs were first talked about months ago, some people saw this actually as a good thing. This is a way to kind of right the wrongs of what they felt were inequities in the way America has had trade policy, particularly with China. But the other concern, of course, is that those tariffs could drive up the cost of certain goods that Americans consume. So we're going to put a graphic up here real quick. And I want you to kind of talk about some of the items that could end up costing more for Americans as a result of these tariffs.
Sure. So first of all, the good news is right now the current sort of wave of tariffs that are taking place on July 6th aren't going to have an enormous impact on consumers like you and me, but certain costs are going to go up. So let's run down some of them, like washing machines and certain household appliances. This actually goes back to some of the tariffs that the Trump administration opposed back in January, so we can look to pay a little bit more there. Solar panels, the cost of solar panels are going up. Because of the higher cost on steel, car manufacturers might be increasing their prices a little, and I only say a little, maybe a couple $100s for the typical cost of an average car. However, be aware that if more tariffs are coming down the line, they could be posed directly on imported cars as well. The big thing that we want to look out for is there's tariffs now on semiconductors, which are the chips that go into any kind of computers or smartphones and devices, particularly that stuff is made in China. That is going to have an increase in cost on consumer goods. There's no specific tariffs on smartphones yet. Like, don't worry, your iPhone is not going to go up in cost yet. But again, the Trump administration is sort of reserving their judgment as to whether or not they want to impose new tariffs in the future.
Sure. Now, Gene, there's the price concerns. That's one aspect which you just nicely detail for us. Some people are also concerned about jobs, right, and saying that this could eventually impact on job loss. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. So I wrote a piece recently for Forbes that was talking about the whiskey industry, for example. I mean, tariffs themselves are affecting specific industries. It really is, particularly around the holiday season.
Exactly.
And, you know, there are a lot of craft whiskey makers now, right now, that are finding that because of tariffs that, you know, the administration has put on, you know, foreign goods coming in, their products are also being tariffed going out. So in other words, it's going to be a lot more expensive to buy a shot of Jack Daniels over in Europe than it would normally cost before. And so a lot of like craft makers and a lot of, you know, boutique whiskey makers are concerned that that's going to impact their business. That's just a small little industry example. But listen, farming industry, people in the steel industry as well, and all the related industries to that. Think about it, when the prices of farming products go up in food, or we can't sell food over to China, for example, you know, all these sort of indirect industries that rely on the farming industry, equipment and services, they're impacted as well. And they all could have an impact on jobs.
Sure. Now, final question on this, Gene. I know you're really the money guy, but I got to add the political element
this
here.
Is money.
I know, absolutely. Sure. So this is the money. But some people would say maybe it cost a little bit more, but they like the political message. They like that this is Americans, you know, reaffirming some strength in this space.
Ebony, I got to tell you, I mean, you're right on the money, Guy. But we have about 600 clients in my firm, and many of them do business with China. And I have to tell you, for years, I have heard client after client complain about the unfair trade balance between our country and countries like China. They complain about prices, you know, going down because products are dumped and they can't get access to Chinese markets, and of course, theft of technology as well. So while there is some pain that some industries are going through, I have to tell you, a lot of my clients, a lot of businesses, big and small, they've been waiting for something like this to happen for a while, and I think that a lot of American businesses are ready for the fight.
Absolutely. The president ran on it, and some would say he's fulfilling that campaign promise. Gene Marks, thanks for joining. Happy 4th.
Thanks, Ebony. Take care.
You too. Mike?
We are celebrating this Independence Day, Ebony, with the brave servicemen and women who keep us safe on the USS Monterey in Norfolk, Virginia. And Anna Koyman is there. Anna, what do you have coming up?
Happy Independence Day, Mike. Yep, the ship's just behind me right here. We are in Norfolk, Virginia, and we're getting you into the spirit with our red, white, and blue. Do you have your sunglasses yet? Your red, white, and blue? Send us pictures with that hashtag Proud of.
Thousands of U.S. soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines are on the front lines protecting the freedom we celebrate today. And that includes the service members on the USS Monterey, a guided missile cruiser now docked in Norfolk, Virginia. Anna Koyman is live in that ship's shadow. Anna, happy Independence Day. Great to see you.
Happy Independence Day to you, Mike, and I am honored to be back and to be the 2018 hashtag Proud American host once again this year. Big thanks to Fox News Channel for flying me back. And we are in the Fox News tent right now here, and I want everybody to take a look at some of the swag you can pick up if you come to the picnic. It starts in just a little while. Our red, white, and blue sunglasses with that hashtag Proud American. We are asking you to send us in your pictures from your barbecue, from you hanging out at the beach in these heat waves that you're experiencing like we're experiencing here. We'd love to see your pictures. We'll be sharing them on our social media channels and of course also on Fox News Channel. Don't you want to tell your friends, I was just on Fox? Send us your pictures, stat. Come on, have you done it yet? Also, t-shirts, Fox News. These are great, aren't they? Little Proud American action on the back. And also, while we have the opportunity, Fox Nation is coming soon. Enter your email to be the first to know. Go to foxnation.com. That's our brand new digital platform that's coming up. We've been brushing up on our founding fathers' history at Colonial Williamsburg. We've been chatting with sailors. About 350 of them are on that USS Monterey, the active ship for active duty. We chatted with a bunch of them about how proud they are to be Americans, and now we want to chat with our sponsor, Navy Federal Credit Union, about what makes them proud to be an American. These are a couple of the general managers. We have Ray and Barbie here. Good afternoon. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. It's great to be here.
And Barbie, you were a medic, is that right, in the Navy? Tell me about your service, if you can.
Yes, I was a hospital corpsman in the United States Navy. I served for 14 years. I joined here in Hampton Roads, and I also ended my service here in Hampton Roads. I come from a long family history of veterans as well. My father, my husband, my son.
I think we have a picture of your son in uniform right now.
Yes.
We do thank you for your service and for your entire family service as well. Why do you think Navy Federal wanted to be a sponsor once again this year of our Proud American coverage?
Well, you know, what makes Navy Federal is our military community, and you know, we're proud to have the opportunity to come out here and say thank you for their service and participate in the, you know, the patriotism of the holiday.
That's great. Thank you so much once again. And Ray, I want to chat with you for just a bit. Tell me about your service in the Marines.
Yeah, I had the privilege and honor of serving the United States Marine Corps for 4 years as a Marine Corps Security Force admin clerk, and that was pretty much the gist of my service.
Why do you think Navy Federal Credit Union wanted to come and be a part of this again this year and sponsor it, make it possible?
Yeah, well, the Marines have a motto. It's once a Marine, always a Marine. And Navy Federal has the same motto, or similar motto, and once a member and always a member. So that service, after you continue to get out, you can continue to be a member of Navy Federal as well. So it's great.
Go. And what makes you proud to be an American is Independence Day, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's the 4th of July. It's Independence Day. It's being out here amongst our veteran members and their family and serving them as well.
What are your plans for the rest of the day?
I'm going going to hit the beach after this.
There you go. Hopefully the rain stops. We got to get our weatherman umbrellas out.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks so much. And how about you? What makes you proud to be an American once again?
What makes me proud to be American is to say that I served our country, and then to be able to continue that service with Navy Federal and serve our military and our military community. I'm very proud to say that.
Well, I think it has been very successful so far, and we do thank you for making it possible. Friends at home, once again, email us those pictures. You can also find us on all of our social media feeds, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, you name it. Use that hashtag Proud American. We'll be sure to keep sharing those photos. Back to you.
Anna Koyman live in Norfolk. Anna, happy Independence Day. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
The race against time to rescue a soccer team trapped in a cave in Thailand. We'll have an update.